I might as well wait till the bell tolls. The largest bell, I'm told, on any college campus in America. Well, welcome. Mr. Chairman, we are delighted to be your host today and tomorrow. So glad you're here, and thought we might just take a minute, in addition in welcoming you, to give you just a little orientation to our campus and share some things that matter deeply to us. First of all, you are on the west side of our campus. Our campus design calls for an academic zone and flanked by two residential zones, and the Burrell Refectory, where we are right now, anchors the western end of our residential zone. Just a little about history. We began actually in Clarksville, Tennessee. 1848, Montgomery Masonic College became affiliated with the Presbyterian Church in 1875 and moved to Memphis 90 years ago. In 1984, the college became Rhodes College, honoring longtime faculty member, dean, and president Peyton Rhodes. This is our big idea. This is our overarching governing idea. The vision for Rhodes connects everyone here, helps keep us all on course, guides our decision-making, lifelong passion for learning, and compassion for others, ability to translate academic study and personal concern into leadership and action in the communities and the world. Our strategy to achieve that vision: we are a national liberal arts college, a very small but important segment of American higher education. There are probably 60-some of us across the country, from Pomona to Williams. If you put all our student bodies together, I was reminded a while back from one of our friends, we could fit every student at every national liberal arts college in America in Neyland Stadium and have 5,000 seats left. But we are a small but very important part of American higher education. For us, being a liberal arts college in a city is particularly important. It informs our strategy. There may be 4 other schools that are of our type and mission. You think of Occidental, you think of Macalester, Trinity, and we think a lot about what it means to be a liberal arts college in a city. Our market competition, in addition to other liberal arts colleges, is really primarily universities in cities: Vanderbilt, Emory, WashU, Tulane. We believe here in Memphis, as a liberal arts college, providing students with the opportunities here really gives us a very important niche in the marketplace, that we can provide opportunities that are available otherwise only at research universities, and are certainly the environment here of a liberal arts college. And we found, as we become more local, more focused on Memphis, Tennessee, Cato, we have become even more of a national institution. We have about 2,000 students. We have a corridor for our enrollment between 2,000 and 2,100. They come from everywhere. About 90% of our students come from somewhere else. Happily, a lot of them stay in Memphis, Tennessee. They bring a phenomenal level of academic talent, great test scores, wonderful grades, and occasionally they'll bring us a published novel, a patent pending, lots of talent, lots of leadership potential, lots of service experience. They bring so much to the campus when they arrive. A little quick word about pricing and access and affordability. Our sticker price is high, not as high as our peers in the East, but about $43,000. Our cost for producing this education is about 40% more. No one pays full cost here at this institution. Our subsidies are primarily endowment and annual fund, and so a typical student would pay a net price of about $20,000 a year, and we pride ourselves in making our good college affordable and accessible, and we have wonderful socioeconomic diversity here. We have an expanding market. Strategy is working. In the last year, our applications have increased over 30%, which is, we think, a very, very good thing. They come from everywhere. If some of you have known the college over the years, we've always been a good place, more regional. Now, as you can see, we have more applicants from California than we have from Mississippi and Kentucky combined. And increasingly, students from everywhere. When Botswana had its 49th birthday 3 weeks ago, a student sent a selfie to remind me about that. We are so fortunate to have students here from everywhere. We focus on three basic things to make the student experience everything we think it can be. Certainly best in classroom. We have almost 200 scholar teachers. We've been so fortunate the last 6 years to get our #1 choice almost every time in our faculty search. Faculty-student ratio here is 10-1. That ensures a lot of student-faculty interaction, not just in the classroom. Faculty-student relationships carry over throughout the day, lots of mentoring, lots of time with faculty outside of the classroom. We have a liberal arts curriculum here we're very proud of, 12 foundation curriculums that really matter. And our growth here in the last few years has been particularly in the sciences. 40% of our students come here intending to major in the sciences, and that makes us now a top 10 liberal arts school in terms of percentage of students graduating in the sciences. And hopefully at the end of the day, we have fielding just a little quick tour. I'll show you a large hole in the ground where we've got a new biochemistry building we're very, very proud of. Best on campus, leadership opportunities abound here, both clubs, organizations. We have a student associates program that does a lot of the real work around here. Very team-oriented, certainly Division III athletics are important to us, but also service teams abound, academic teams abound. We are 3-time national champion, for instance, in mock trial, and last year ranked #2. Harvard was #1, but we have some very wonderful student programs here that help students grow and develop outside the classroom, all under a code of honor. When you break for lunch, you'll notice that there are hundreds of book packs and computers and purses just laying out there. That's just part of the culture that we enjoy here, living together under a code of honor. We're also very proud, of course, of what we do beyond the gates. Research Day here is the biggest day of the year outside of graduation. We call it IRCUS. We'll have 400 or 500 students presenting their research. Much of that comes from partnering with wonderful places off campus like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Internships abound. Most of our students have multiple internships when they graduate. 2/3 of our students will study away. And service, which is a signature part of the culture here, over 80% of our students graduate with some very meaningful, significant service time here in Nashville. Real quickly, all that's resulted in some accolades that people have provided us that we're very proud of. My favorite, of course, America's Most Likely to Succeed College. Newsweek commenting on a fantastic percentage of our students who get into great graduate schools and professional schools. Very proud for multiple years we have been named America's Most Service-Minded College. And there's a lot of contention about this, but some years we are named America's Most Beautiful College Campus. Some nice publications that have lifted us up. Colleges that Change Lives, 40 schools that New York Times education editor cited for dramatic student growth. We're very proud of that. Forbes' notion of colleges that pay you back. And most recently, we're very proud to be listed in a new publication, 50 schools in America that create futures. So all to say, we are so delighted you're here. And quite frankly, we're all, it seems to me, Mr. Chairman, in the business of creating positive futures for all our children. And so again, we're delighted to be your host today. And welcome to Rhodes.
We just express appreciation for the hospitality. This is a great event here that you've orchestrated, so we appreciate it. Ask you to go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I think all of you in our touring met Dr. Russ Wigington, our Vice President for External Programs, who is all over Memphis, Tennessee, helping our students and faculty connect. In recent years, thinking more about facilitating even some wonderful conversations about what we do here in terms of urban education. Zach Casey, one of our education faculty members here today. But Dr. Wigington has put together an all-star panel who will introduce right now to share with you more about education reform here in Memphis, Tennessee. Russ?
Thank you, Dr. Trout. I promise it's coincidence today that we have the same tie on. He did convert me to wearing bow ties in recent years, but he doesn't make me wear the same one that he does. But I'm proud that I have my Rhodes College tie on today. It's my pleasure to introduce three educational leaders in this community who I've gotten to know quite well over the years and who I have tremendous respect for. They're doing extremely important work in this city and have embarked on some challenges and opportunities that I think are a part of how a community moves forward in the extremely important work of educating our young people. To my right, immediate right, is Brad Leon, who I've gotten to know over the years. He was the executive director who brought Teach for America to Memphis. He is a proud Occidental graduate. I think there's a connection there to why you're in Memphis, Tennessee, given that Rhodes and Occidental have quite a bit of similarities. Brad is currently oversees the innovation zone for Shelby County Schools. He has done tremendous work in our community and is held in high regard. To his right is Tim Ware. Tim is a graduate of Cedarville University, and Tim came to Memphis and started Veritas Charter School. From there, he went on to be a leader for New Leaders, New Schools, and he's most recently been named executive director for the Achievement School District. And to his right is Lars Nelson, who's head of School of Freedom Prep Academy, which is a locally established and started charter school that's doing great work in the city. And he is a graduate of Rhodes College and proud to be one of those. And we're so proud of him and the work that he does. I've asked them to share a little bit about their work in their respective roles, and certainly time permitting, and we hope there will be, there for you to ask questions of the three of them. So, gentlemen, thank you.
Sure. So as Russ shared, my name is Tim Ware. Glad to be here in Memphis. I came in 2006 actually as a part of the founding core, Teach for America's founding core, and taught at Fraser High School. I taught social studies there for a couple of years, and then had the opportunity to found Veritas, and Russ shared again the work that I've done since. It's interesting, my journey into public education was not a traditional one. I joined Teach for America at 30 years old. Prior to that, I had overseen youth services at a hospital in Indianapolis for a number of years. We provided just a number of wraparound services, non-medical services to what was described as an at-risk community. The interesting thing was that at-risk community was the community that I lived in, so I had an opportunity to work with so many friends and families that were next door neighbors of mine. When I got into public education, I really looked at it as being the same fight, so to speak. This was a work that was just shrouded in helping other people be equipped with the tools that they need to live lives of purpose and lives of destiny, and education most certainly is that. So I've been here now for nearly 10 years, and Memphis has been very good to me in terms of a great place to live, great place to raise a family, but more importantly, I'm excited about being here because, as many people have identified, this city and this state as being the epicenter of education reform, and I'm so excited about the opportunity to be working in a space where we have the chance to show the nation that this is how you deliver high quality public education to students that have historically been marginalized or disenfranchised, but this is how you do it in a way that equips those children, equips those families, equips those communities with what they need to own their own future, own their own destiny. So I'm really, really excited to be here, honored to sit next to these two colleagues that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years, and look forward to hearing any questions that you all may have of us when we get to that portion of today's program. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. My name is Lars Nelson. I'm the Chief Instruction Officer at Freedom Prep Freedom Preparatory Academy. We're a charter school in Southwest Memphis. I started there right when I graduated from Rhodes, which was not very long ago, 2009. And I was our history teacher. We had 90 kids. We got 1,200 kids now. And last year we had 600, so we just doubled. So not a lot of sleep going on between that and my 2-year-old. So I think important things to know about Freedom Prep is that we were very committed to our neighborhood. We're funded to grow to 7 schools over the next 5 years in Westwood and Whitehaven, which are 2 neighborhoods in Southwest Memphis. We started a high school a few years ago. That was the role I had after teaching at Freedom Prep, starting the high school there. We did that because we'd had our first group of kids, and they went to a lot of different high schools. Some of them got into schools that were private schools, and we thought that was going to be the ticket for them, in a sense. And what we found was that they had a really hard time acclimating to the culture at some of these schools. We had other students that really struggled at Freedom Prep that academically still probably are not ready. Those kids are now 12th graders, probably still not ready, but some of them get 4.0s at the neighborhood high school. And so we couldn't find a school that was the right balance of inclusive for our students and academically rigorous. And so we started a high school a few years ago, and now we have pre-K through 11th grade, adding 12th grade next year. And we try so hard, as I'm watching that PowerPoint, there's so many things that Rhodes is about that we want our high school to be about, and that otherwise our students would not have the opportunity to experience in a middle school or a high school setting. And I'm looking forward to answering whatever questions you have about Freedom Prep or a school-based perspective on the challenges and opportunities Tennessee is currently facing.
My name is Bradley Leon. I'm the Chief of Strategy and Innovation for Shelby County Schools, and want to first thank President Trout for hosting and Dr. Wigginton for his warm introduction. I am responsible for the innovation zone within Shelby County Schools, but also am responsible for the charter school sector, our performance management team, our assessment team, student information, and as you know, there's a lot of work and change going on across the state. What gives me the most hope, and I'm sure you've heard about this, is the impact that our innovation zone schools have had in our bottom 5% schools here in Shelby County. I think the idea around the rest of the country is that people don't think that districts can turn around their own schools. And so when you see that the iZone has more than doubled the rate of student learning in our first cohort of schools that we took on, we've more than doubled the rate of learning in the second cohort of schools that we've taken on. And in our third cohort, we have 2 of our toughest high schools where we saw almost 10-point gains in 1 year. So when you get the right leadership at the building level, you empower those leaders. When you get great teachers, really great things can happen irrespective of the context. So like my fellow panelists, really excited to be here and excited to take any questions you have.
Cato, go ahead.
Tim, Brad, thinking about iZone and thinking about ASD, how do the 2 of you feel that you'll be able to create greater synergy between your 2 organizations? You know, we hear about the role of each, and being familiar with what both of you do. Where do you see synergy coming? Especially Tim, you being new in the role, Brad, you being here a while. Where do you see that happening?
You want to take a first stab at that?
Sure. I think the current state is we want to partner with the ASD to make sure that our community has all the information that they need. So the ASD did a series of meetings in the community prior to any schools being announced. We did a series of meetings so that our community was informed. We're really encouraging our parents in the surrounding communities to be involved in the neighborhood advisory councils. And I think that we're not close to being there yet, but as you know, the schools that the ASD currently governs will one day come back to Shelby County Schools. And so I think we're currently building those personal relationships to enable that kind of thing, but I still think we have some work to do in figuring out how to hand schools back to the district, which is a conversation we haven't had, but is a really important one to come.
And just one piece that I would add to that in a very practical way. I was able to have a conversation with one of the folks on Brad's team, Dr. Sharon Griffin, who directly oversees the iZone work. And given that we are all working in priority schools, there are some very similar challenges in all of those schools. So the conversation that we had just, I'll call it a month and a half ago, was let's start to think really strategically about how we leverage professional development in a way across schools, that we're all kind of getting exposed to the same best practices in the spaces where it really makes sense, so that there is much more of a greater level of cooperation. As Brad said, you know, in building the relationships is critical. But if all of this work is about impacting priority schools, then there are things that we could do together to have a more pronounced and collective impact on those schools. So that's just one, like a concrete example of the types of ways that we need to start thinking about or operationalizing the collaboration that could exist.
So, thank you guys for this morning. To what extent are the practices that you all employ that drive those successes transferable to public education?
I can take a very basic one that I think I haven't been here long enough, I guess, in education, as long as many of the folks in the room, to know whether this is new or not. But something that's fundamental that was part of all of the training of, for example, charter leaders that I've met, was really analyzing assessment results. This is a very basic thing, right? So instead of just kids take a test, grade goes in the grade book, we shut school down for 4 days a year in our approved calendar to just look at on big tests that kids take, all of the data. So what % of kids got this question right? If they got it right, good. What % of kids got this question wrong? 80%? 60% of them picked C. Why did 60% pick C? There's a misconception here. What is that misconception? And now we're going to reteach it. And that's just one example, but I feel like a lot of the practices are as transferable and replicable as that one, because they're just things that the leader in the building makes sure that all of the teachers are doing and they're supported in doing to drive student achievement.
So, so, are you all ever asked by teacher prep programs to download what you've learned so that they could become best practices taught? Probably not, huh?
Well, I can give one example that sort of fits in that vein. So a new graduate school in Tennessee is called Relay Graduate School of Education. And Relay started in Memphis this year. And Relay actually grows out of a network of schools called Uncommon Schools that's historically in Newark and New York City. And that's their teacher prep program. We learned everything we know at Freedom Prep from Uncommon Schools. And so this is their graduate school, and they've got site in Chicago, New Orleans, and now in Memphis. So the flow of knowledge actually is sometimes the other direction. And so we have a cohort of teachers, all of our co-teachers in K through 2 are in Relay, getting this great practical training from them. I don't know that Freedom Prep has ever been approached by a teacher prep program to learn more, but there is sort of in the teacher prep program world some of this institutional knowledge as well.
Can I just follow up on that in particular? So when I launched Teach for America here, and then I launched Teach for America in Nashville, I'll just, tale of two cities. When Teach for America was recognized as one of the highest performing teacher prep organizations in the state on the state's report card, we had a partner in Nashville at the time led by Dr. McQueen at Lipscomb, who was very interested in partnering, very interested in collaborating and sharing best practices. And we partnered with several people here in Memphis. I didn't get a single phone call about, you know, how your folks were. So I think it depends upon the leadership of an institution. So the best practices can be replicated, but the thing that I see over and over again is that leadership matters in the classroom, leadership matters at the school level, and leadership matters at the institutional level. And whether we can scale the best practices, I think, is going to be highly dependent upon whether we can get a new generation of great leadership to come into education. So there's nothing different about iZone practices than you would hear about in great charter schools, but I think what we found a way to do is get some of our district's very best principals to come work in the toughest circumstances, the same for teachers. So that's inherently replicable, but you're just going to run out of talent at some point. You're going to run out of great teachers, so we got to continually find great people to run our institutions from top to bottom.
I would love to know what, from each level, so the school or the CMO level, the iZone, and then a full district ASD level, what you would say your one biggest barrier to growth of quality is. And it can be like growth is in more schools, growth is in performance in your schools or in your districts. Just the one, if you could get rid of one barrier, only one, what it would be.
External or internal? I'll start at the school level. I think for us, it's an internal barrier, and that's really clarifying our vision for what it means for students to be successful, right? So like we have new standards, we have a new test. The beautiful thing about that is there have been years now where we have sort of held this sort of shadow bar of college preparation that was higher than the bar of the Tennessee standards and Tennessee assessment. That was so challenging. We felt like it was the right thing to do. Our mission is to prepare all students in grades K through 12 to excel in college and in life. And so we've held this higher bar, and now the state is holding this higher bar, which presents so many challenges, of course, but it really makes crystal clear what kids should be able to do in terms of learning outcomes academically. When I say clarify our vision, what I mean is, what are all of the things that we have to do to prepare our teachers to get kids to meet that bar? What does a 60-minute, well-spent math lesson in 6th grade look like, right? And just all of those small details. What is the best desk configuration to have a discussion about a text in a 7th grade English classroom? All of those excruciating details, when we get clear on that, I think we'll see massive progress towards our mission. Biggest external barrier is talent, but internally it's clarifying that vision.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with both of those. So I'll take a moment to comment on the talent piece. In my former role prior to the seat that I sit in now, I was the executive director for New Leaders. And New Leaders is an organization which identifies and trains transformational principles to kind of meet the needs in the most challenging schools in a district. In that space, partnering with Shelby County Schools, Brad mentioned the iZone, nearly half of those principals were New Leaders trained principals. A study recently came out there were two findings in the study. One, in a high-needs school, the average principal tenure is less than 3 years. But we cannot solve the issues in that school and in that community in that short amount of time. Like you need more time. So if the work is that grinding and people can go 3 years and then they're at that place where they're starting to burn out, then you constantly have to have like that next man up, that next woman up. Who's going to be the next great leader to continue the transformation in this school? That same study showed that principals alone account for 25% of the academic growth in any school. I mean, if you want to pull a key lever, that is an incredible lever to pull. We know that great principals set a very clear vision for the school. They create a culture of camaraderie and a real culture of I can. We know that they grow teachers and paraprofessionals. They grow the talent. They attract great talent. They keep great talent. And all of that continuity is incredibly important if you're looking at in my role, for example, a network of schools in the Fraser community, a community that has 73% of its students that live in poverty. I mean, that's one of the highest child poverty rates in the United States. And again, you won't solve the problems of those schools in 3 years, but you can make incredible growth and incredible traction. And so the question for us then is, who are that next set of teachers that can take this learning from where it is, take it to the next level? Who is that principal that can step in and say, I'm going to fill these shoes of this incredible principal that was before me and take this school to the next level? What you see more often is whenever you have those transitions that the data starts to go down and then come back up, goes down and comes back up. We want to get to a place where there is enough talent to say that, hey, This principal has done incredible work leading this school, engaging this community, transforming the lives of these students, and they're ready to rest, right? They're ready to catch their breath and take on the next challenge in a different context. But who's next? When that rock star teacher says, hey, I've done this work for a number of years, I'm ready for the next challenge, I want to grow, I want to have a broader impact in this education space, who can stand in front of that classroom next? And so that talent question is a very real question. And it's more than, to me, it's not just the kind of, continuity type of question. This is like you have children walking into these schools every day, children sitting in these desks, and their very livelihoods are dependent upon the quality of the adult that we bring into this space. And so that's the space that if there's something that kind of keeps me awake at night, it's that question, the question of talent. Where do we get it from? How do we attract it, continue to grow it, and keep it?
Yeah, and I'm going to just repeat very shortly here. I have hope around this. We had, in 2009, only about 20% of teachers within Shelby County schools were level 4 or 5 TVAS. And today it's 48%. So that is because of our partnership in part with the Gates Foundation and local philanthropists. We've gotten better at recruiting, selecting, training, and supporting. So it's possible, and we still have a long way to go, but we have thousands of people who are making more than a year's worth of growth with kids. But I think it's really focusing on those levers, recruiting, selecting, training, and supporting, and really making sure the conditions at the school level are such that good people want to come in. Because that's really the key. When everything is said and done, it's all about what a teacher does when they close the door of their classroom. And if we don't have the very best people in those seats, we're not going to make the kind of impact any of us want.
Just to dig into this topic a little bit more deeply, because I agree, talent, teaching really at its core is a micro enterprise. It's between that teacher and those students, and magic can happen there. We know that, we've all seen it, and we've seen where it doesn't happen, and we know the difference it makes in student lives when you have that magic happening on a regular basis in every classroom every year. So I agree, I think a lot of our challenges come back to getting really great people into our classrooms, supporting them, and keeping them. And so just maybe a little bit more granularity on some of the things that you're finding that work and where you're still seeing challenges. One of the beauties of being with the state board is that we get to go around and talk with people like you who are doing the really, really important work. And so knowing some of the things that you're finding around, whether it is, the relays of the world that are coming online that are helping to prepare some teachers that are more classroom ready on day one. But what else do you need? What are you finding that works when it comes to recruitment and then retention and really growing your teachers once you get them in the doors? Any more specifics that we can learn from?
Yeah, I'll just say something on recruitment that's an anecdote but reflects, I think, a larger point. When I was with TFA here, I was invited by a professor at Rhodes to come and talk to his or her class, and they were pretty critical of Teach for America, which was fine. I was happy to go back and forth with them, but at its root, Teach for America is about getting really great leaders to commit their lives to education. So I asked them the question, so you're in an education class here at Rhodes. How many of you seniors have been contacted by Memphis City Schools to come be a teacher? 0. So a lot of our teacher prep programs aren't even getting into the game of recruiting people who wouldn't otherwise just walk through their doors. So the current population of people who come into education, some of them are great, but typically teacher prep programs are not being opportunistic about reaching out to folks and really aggressively recruiting people who might also make an impact if they were approached in the right way. Some people are just going to walk through your doors, and some people you got to go out and get. And teacher prep, in my experience, hasn't been very aggressive about going out and getting different kinds of people. That's just on the recruitment. I have more.
That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. And you referenced the report card earlier too, Brad, and I think, we're looking forward to thinking about this next year as a time to revamp and redesign that and try to make some of those elements pop for teacher prep programs. And I think proactive recruitment is a big one that we really have to work on as a state. That's a great example. Others that you all are learning? Lars?
Yeah, well, when we started, we had a suburban of people, and that was like the teachers and the leadership team and the office manager. We could all fit in like an XL suburban. And this year we have 65 teachers, about 115 employees, and that's pretty much double last year. And so up until last year, 70% of new hires at Freedom Prep either knew somebody at Freedom Prep or just heard word of mouth. That obviously didn't work when we doubled, and it led to a lot of last minute hiring. You know, we have a teacher who's in the certification program at Relay that was our dean of students accountant until 3 weeks before teacher orientation and wanted to make a move. We had our CEO was at Enterprise Rental Car, and the person gave really clear instructions for how to take the rental car, and she was like, have you thought about being a teacher before? And now she's one of our co-teachers getting certified through Relay. And so there's an element of just like creativity that has to come to getting the right people in your building. We do a lot of recruitment on undergrad campuses, actually, and that's helpful since we have a way to certify them through Relay. But similar to what Brad is saying about Teach for America, we spend a lot of time on campuses of places where we've seen teachers come from recently. So we have a lot of recruiting at Mississippi State because we've had a lot of teachers come from Mississippi State. That's not necessarily because we believe deeply in Mississippi State any more than any place else. It's just because we have an in there through our staff. So that's part of it. We also try to do a lot of recruiting of alumni from Teach for America or other teacher prep programs that have like a 2 or 3 year placement, and then people start thinking, well, maybe I want to move. And that obviously might pull people from one of Brad's schools, and I know Brad would ruthlessly take someone from Freedom Prep if it was to the advantage of kids in the iZone. So there's a lot of just fighting for people that are good teachers in other schools, honestly. I don't know that there's a great solution to the overall talent issue, but at a school level, you can fight and steal and get the best people you can for your kids.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make one last point on this. From the lens of policy, like there's an inherent disconnect between the people who are charged with preparing our teachers and those who are accountable for the results of the teachers. The moment I think people are truly accountable to how their teachers perform, you might start to, that's part of the equation is, you know, so I'm receiving tuition dollars, my teachers aren't performing, no accountability except the state report card, which just shows that I'm not doing a very good job, but no real accountability beyond that. And so there isn't really a force mechanism for folks to change.
I will say, stay tuned. We've been in the process of changing that policy to be more outcome-based, still being implemented slower than we probably like, but I agree.
Lizzie? Yep.
Would you describe the onboarding process for your teachers? Because I think that's clearly has to be a vital piece of, okay, you hire the talented people, but what process do you have internally to keep them with you, to keep them engaged and not to become discouraged because of what they're expected to do day in and day out? Because I don't know what your turnover is like, but if you could even speak to that in terms of how you're turning over teachers and how long are you keeping them, the longevity. And I'm looking at you, but this is really for all of you.
So in terms of teacher retention, you know, we have years where we retain 90% of people. We have years where we retain 70% of people, and 70% is closer to a bad year for us. We're a small organization. We have a really strong adult culture, and so that's possible. I think there's a baseline of talent you have to have, but then it's on you to train your people the right way. And so teachers show up this year, July 20th. Kids showed up August 10th. And so 3 weeks. The first week, we have the whole network of teachers together. If it's instructionally related, I'm leading it because I'm the best person at that. If it's culture related, Mr. Salam leads it because he's the best person at that. And our PD is very practice-based. I might give a quick taxonomy or something you do as a teacher in a 90-minute session. 20 minutes is me instructing, and then 70 minutes is teachers practicing. And there's a school leader right there giving them feedback, and there's a quick loop. Because if you don't see something done well in PD, you're kind of rolling the dice that it might be done well when the door closes. And that's with deep respect to our teachers. Our teachers love that development, though. I think that's part of why the retention is as high, because there's not a place at which people feel like they've maxed out, or they're just like, well, I'm not going to get better. They're always getting pushed. Every teacher has observation and feedback every week. And you have to staff to pull that off, but that's the case. So first week, everyone's together, and then the 2 weeks after that in the summer are in the schools, and then we release at 2 p.m. every Friday and have 2.5 hours of PD on Friday afternoons.
Yeah, I would say that similar to Freedom Prep, we had about 2.5 weeks of teacher induction before the school year started. And to prep for that, we pulled a lot of data from last year that was either general to our network of schools or specific to content area and or teachers. So that this could have been, hey, like second grade, SAT 10 scores, math, we've got to do some things differently here. But we looked at both a kind of high level view and then a more narrower view as we planned what these 2.5 weeks would look like. But as we all know, development is ongoing. I asked our chief academic officer to give me the report on the number of touches and feedback loops that took place during the first quarter of this year, so through September 30, and there were 531 recorded observation and feedback cycles that took place across our network of schools. When I saw the number, because anecdotally I was getting that, like, man, this is really good. We're getting a lot of really actionable feedback that improves practice, that informs practice, that makes a difference in the learning. And I was surprised when I saw the number, because my initial thought was, holy cow, that's a lot. Are people, like, I would have thought that people would be feeling overwhelmed. But as Lars pointed out, there's not a feeling of being overwhelmed. There's a feeling of we are actually getting the type of support that allows us to meet the challenges or the issues that we're facing in the classroom as we engage with our students every day. So I think it's really critical to understand the data surrounding the schools, the students, the practices that are in place, et cetera, and to really tailor your training and professional development there. But at the end of the day, you really won't know what some of these needs are unless you spend a lot of time in the school. So I'm thinking about the folks that support the schools and support the principals and support the teachers. We have to spend a lot of time in the schools. We've already done complete culture walkthroughs for all of our schools, and we've given that information, our findings, back to principals. We've sat down with principals and leadership teams and really unpacked that. And then we've supported principals in communicating these findings to their teachers and to their paraprofessionals, to their support staff, and saying, these are things that we're doing really well. How can we continue to do that and make an impact in our students' lives? And what are the things that we have to find ways to do better so that learning takes place? You mentioned the magic in the classroom. Like, everything has to be geared around how do we make this magic in the classroom happen. So those are some of the things that we're doing to provide just ongoing support for our teachers and for all of our staff, so that we can continue to get better, so that our students continue to learn at faster rates.
This can be a short question. Lars, you mentioned teachers, really, you got to train them, but they got to come in at a certain level.
Yeah.
How informative is the state's licensure test praxis to you in making that determination?
I think it might be more helpful than you would think. So if someone fails the middle school content knowledge test, you're rolling the dice, right?
Well, that's pretty, that seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, I think I could figure that one, but
You could. Yeah, no, but I mean, we've had people that it takes a couple times to pass the test. And
but
they've
if they
been-
do, that
And we've had some of them that are solid for
Really?
years that have had to take a couple times to pass the test. In high school, no way if you don't pass that test can you pull it off. But I mean, the middle school content knowledge test, it is a no-brainer. So it's helpful. I do think, I don't really know, maybe y'all know better than me. I'm not sure how Tennessee's cut scores on that test compare to other states. But my perception has been at one point when I had to take the test, I looked it up and was like, glad I'm taking it in Tennessee. And so there might also be an element of the cut scores that are relevant in the conversation too.
Yes. Tim, you told us what keeps you up at night. Lawrence, Brad, what keeps you up at night?
My son. He went to bed at 11 last night. Went to bed at 11 and got up at 4. I think what keeps me up at night is my point earlier about this internal barrier of getting clear on what we need to do while we are growing, right? You're building the plane while you're flying it is the phrase that we use. And that's just challenging. And it means that there's going to be years until we figure out the details of everything, even though right now we have human beings in pre-K through 11 in our classrooms. And it's our responsibility to be very clear on that. But we're growing a little bit faster than we can get clear on that. I still think a parent is smart to put their kid at Freedom Prep while we're figuring that out, because we do it very actively. I was in New York trying to do that a couple weeks ago, looking at some of the best schools that kind of weathered the storm of their Common Core test. what are they doing? I was in Columbus, Ohio at a school on Tuesday. And so we're really working hard to figure that out. We're just growing faster than we can generate answers right now.
So in working with the iZone, I get to work with our teachers and our kids and our principals at the school level, and they're all in schools that are in the bottom 5%. And what keeps me up at night is just the enormity of the path ahead of our kids. I mean, the superintendent is, reminds us pretty consistently that in Shelby County schools, 50,000 of our kids are living in homes where the incomes are less than $10,000 a year. And it's impossible to ignore the Herculean task our kids have in front of them. And I don't like to spend a lot of time on that as an educator, because I think that can lead you to a path of there's nothing we can do. And I think, the people who usually say there's nothing we can do are usually also the people who say that teachers are so important. Well, it's one or the other. Like, either teachers can make an impact or there's nothing we can do. But it's impossible to ignore. Like, this is a holistic, community-wide challenge that our kids are facing, and there is a lot we can do within education. But the quote that I sort of refer to a lot when I'm feeling that kind of despair is, Lord, your ocean is so large and my boat is so small. You see with your eyes what our kids are up against, and you're going to throw everything you can against that challenge. And you hope and pray that it's enough. But I think that's what keeps me up at night. Is like, there's a lot we can do, but I worry about the larger constraints that our kids are living under.
I want to ask you guys a little bit about the noise that surrounds your work, and you all are looking at me like you know what I'm talking about. So I can hear about, for example, I think it would apply to all three of you, but at the ASD's results, and I can hear a presentation on it here, and I can hear a presentation on it here, and it's like two different worlds. And I'm a person who digs deep, so I know where the truth is. But most of, I guess, the folks who are listening or halfway listening or whatever are getting very information where there is sometimes not a whole lot of focus on truth. And do you guys, I mean, do you need to deal with that in Memphis? Do you have, like, is it a problem with the work that you're doing? Does it affect what's happening for kids? And if so, how are you addressing that? Like, what are you guys doing to deal with that?
Yeah, I'll start with that. There is a lot of noise. The way that I really stay grounded is by focusing on what the actual mission is. So for individuals that know me well, even some people that know me not so well, have probably heard me say, I'm not interested in a debate around governance structures. Like, I didn't get into any of this work to talk about governance structures. I got into this work because there are so many kids here in Memphis that look like me, that live in these homes with less than $10,000 of annual income, who walk into my school when I was a middle school principal as sixth graders reading at the second grade level. That's what this work is about. This work is about transforming children's lives. So when I stay focused on that, it's easy for me to just like block out the noise. I know it's a pretty long quote, so I'll just give Tim Ware's paraphrase of it, but it's not the critic that counts, it's the person in the arena with the mud and the blood on their face. Like, that's the person that we should be high-fiving, giving our support to, not the critics that always talk about what could have been done, what should have been done. If I was in this seat, I'd do it differently, because most of the folks that say that actually aren't doing anything other than pontificating on a problem that they are not making any efforts to solve. So that's, the noise is there. The noise is real. I'm also, and I am a believer, I might be a little bit of an idealist, but I am a believer that know the truth, and the truth will make you free. So whenever we get into these conversations, I always just try to bring it back to, like, let's talk about some facts, like things that are not in dispute. Let's just talk about facts. Our perspectives should be informed by the facts, and very well-intentioned, very intelligent people can come to very different conclusions based on the facts, and that's not a problem. But the noise is real. My team, we stay focused on doing the work, and to the extent that it's possible, we want that work to speak for itself. But I mean, it is real. I don't spend an inordinate amount of time trying to silence it, debate it, engage in it. You know, I just kind of keep our focus on the work and the children and communities that we're here to serve.
Yeah, for me, I think it starts with keeping your focus on the mission as a person. Like, personally, that's what I try and focus on, but you also have been in enough community meetings and school board meetings that you know that's not the only thing you can do. Like, you also have to be and apply your efforts to extensive communication efforts to get the truth out there, because the folks who are pushing a different narrative will do that themselves, and if you concede the field, then that becomes the truth in the public eye.
Absolutely.
And I think another part of it is not just communication, but hardcore advocacy. So if you have a position and you think the facts are on your side, that can't be enough. Like, you know that there are groups of people out there who will organize and mobilize around an agenda. You have to do the same. And so I think it is, you know, focusing on the work, making sure that you are centered yourself, but then you have to be an expert communicator, and you have to be expert at making sure you're getting folks rallied around your particular position and advocating for it. Because it's, you know, any political issue, and education is a political issue. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just the reality. And you don't want to spend a lot of time shouting at the rain. Like, that's the way it's going to be forever.
Yeah.
Yes, Bill?
Just a quick comment and a question for all three of you. First of all, Cato and I are all in Memphis, Tennessee. We're pretty bullish on our city. I would say that one of our top points of pride is that we are a center for education reform. No question about it. You all are rock stars in our world. And
On occasion.
we thank you for we thank you for not only being here today, but for all you do for your students in your community. Question is, you know, we are primarily a policy-making body, and ideally, on the best day, state policies align with the ways you want to support your students, the way you want to facilitate student learning in your schools. But where could policy better align with your goals for your students, your goals for your schools? And I know that we could have an afternoon seminar, I suspect, but could you just point quickly to one area where you'd encourage us to explore just rethinking policy, because you know some of the implications for it, and maybe there's a way to make that better align with your good work.
I'm going to pick up on a theme that I left off on a little while ago, and I unfortunately don't know the true distinction between the purview of the legislature and the purview of the state board, and I'm sure you all are expert at that, but I do think that our teacher prep organizations across the state really want to do good work, but I don't think the incentives are aligned. Like, when I was recruiting for Teach for America, which is what I did before I launched TFA here, I was, you know, I literally met with 1,000 college seniors over the span of 2 years, aggressively trying to get them to come out, and was not competing against anyone at those schools. Now, if you all of a sudden say to universities across the state, look, you're going to be accountable actually to your performance on the state report card and how your folks do, I kind of think that they are going to be much more aggressive about expanding the group of people they're looking after. Like I said, there are outstanding people who will naturally by themselves walk through the doors of a teacher prep organization, but then there are a lot of other folks out there who, if just approached, and I have personal experience with this, would do it, and I think if the incentives were lined up, where there was real accountability, that would help.
I would speak to some of the issues around funding for special education. I think that in the schools that we serve, some of our schools have special education populations as high as 20%, just north of 20%. And the dollars allocated to provide those children with the services that they need don't come anywhere close to meeting what the cost of the services actually are. It puts those children at a disadvantage, and it also forces us to pull resources from other areas to fill that gap so that we are meeting those needs in a very equitable manner. But the impact on that is that, I mean, we're in a very resource-constrained space, and I don't think we could, as a society, consistently deliver on this idea of equitable education for students with special needs if we have to continue to do it with such limited resources.
I think that's a great point. And if our CEO, who's the person invited instead of me, who's also a Rhodes alum, I think she would more articulately than I could jump on top of that point, because that's something we've talked a lot about. A couple things. I know that a lot of states have different ways they go about having schools pay for facilities, specifically charter schools. And so something that we encounter as we go see really tremendous schools in other parts of the country is that their per pupil funding is $6,000 more than ours per kids, or they got a free building, or the square footage rate they pay on their building is somehow indexed to their student achievement results in their building. And so it just makes an organization like Freedom Prep that's committed to a particular neighborhood, it makes it challenging to lock up the facilities to actually do that. And so I think the way that schools go about acquiring facilities and pay for them is something to look at. We're paying rent on a building right now, and I think that we could probably have 4 or 5 more people in our building for what we're paying a year in rent on that building. And we have really good results, and we're happy to have the building. But in no way is there any sort of advantage to us in terms of facilities because of our results.
Other questions? One question we get frequently is the amount of testing that's going on, required, so forth. I guess would like your thoughts about that amount of testing, how you're using the results, and particularly what needs to be done or is being done to educate parents, students, and teachers about the value or lack of value in the testing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll start by saying that, you know, in Memphis, we have $1 billion budget for Shelby County schools, and the idea that the public would invest $1 billion in its public education system without knowing what the impact of that is just anathema to me. So I think annual testing is vital. It's important. It tells teachers and principals and parents how well their kids are doing every single year. I think the recent recommendations from the assessment advisory group at the state level were right on. I mean, if we can pare down testing that's not not needed, that's fine. But I think, I don't know what the numbers are statewide, but as a taxpayer here and someone who is responsible for our system, it's helpful for me to understand how well our kids are doing. And I think when I was a student, it wasn't in the era of a lot of the testing, but I can guarantee you testing was happening every single, I'm sure when you were in school, you were getting quizzes and tests every single Friday. I think the reason it's become politicized is because now people are being held accountable to results. So if you remove statewide testing, kids would still be tested every single Friday by their teachers. We just wouldn't have a sense about what was working actually at a macro level.
Others?
Yeah, we give a lot of tests on top of the tests that the state asks because of that hyper focus on how our kids doing. So we have 3 types of tests. Tests that measure mastery of state standards, tests that tell us how our kids are performing in a nationally normed sense. They all take a computer-based test, fall, winter, and spring, called MAP, that gives you a national percentile in math and in reading. And then every kid gets a test, either STEP or Fontes and Pinnell, which is a one-on-one administered reading assessment about 4 or 5 times a year. Takes sometimes up to 30 minutes, sometimes as short as 5, but we know exactly where our kids are, so we know exactly what we should do to get them to the next place. And we're very happy about the shifts in the state test. I remember being a teacher at Freedom Prep teaching history in 2009, having to Google the New York State test to see, what does a rigorous bar look like for 5th graders who might one day want to take an AP history course. And now in that February test that we're taking in history, we have that bar being held. And so I think that the way the tests are being designed makes the time even more worth it now.
And I am a supporter of state assessments, really for the reasons that Brad laid out and Lars. The piece that I would add to this is I think what we hear is there over-testing that's taking place? And I think as educators, we do have to be conscious that we are not spending so much time testing that we're losing time actually teaching, right? But the other way that I think about is like as a former athlete, and I mean former, like 100 pounds ago, you were consistently subjected to some type of testing or assessment. And there wasn't, like, it wasn't stressful, it wasn't, something that you really had to worry about, because what was happening was your trainers and your coaches were getting data that they would then use to help improve your performance. And when that is kind of the perspective of what testing actually is, and when principals make that feeling live and breathe in the building, like, hey, this is a chance to show off what you know. This is also a chance for us to go from where we are to where we want to be. I think a lot of the at the student level, and even at the teacher level, like a lot of the stress really goes away. So I think in the space that we're in now, I hear the push against over-testing, but I don't know if we're at a space yet where we're over-testing. I think some of the stress at the adult level is linked to the accountability of it. But how we communicate it, how we frame it to our children and our families is also incredibly important. And when you see the schools that frame it as, this is your chance to show what you know, show off a little bit, and help us help you, like you just see actually you see excitement around testing as opposed to any type of aversion to it.
Well, the bell has rung. Bill, I think we're gonna need that, take that bell along with us. Use it for other meetings. It's a good reminder of where we are time-wise, so appreciate it. Any final questions? We do certainly appreciate the great panel discussion, great answers. And appreciate the questions that were asked. I think really a good discussion. So we really appreciate it. Bill, certainly appreciate folks setting this up, and it's been great.
Well, it's lunchtime, and may I make a quick announcement about that, Mr. Chairman? Sure. We'll break for just a minute. We will be having lunch here in this hall. Hope our guests, if they have time, can stay with us. And I'm hoping in just a minute, those two doors to the north will magically open and there's a buffet behind them. But we're going to take just a quick break, and then we'll have our buffet lunch in there, and then we can come back out here for a conversation around the table.